You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and we've reached that point where every show we get from here on out it's like bonus, right?
Yes.
Like bonus football means bonus shows, so
And
we'll take it.
we are guaranteed to at least go one more week thanks to the Wilson victory.
Yeah,
Friday
we are not
night.
done tonight.
Friday night in York. No, this is episode 16 of our 7th season, and we are guaranteed 17 episodes. We'll be back next Sunday, same time, same places.
I look back, I'm like, man, how did we used to recap 2 shows and do a preview of like
The first
or,
year
sorry,
we
2
did
games
3
I
or
meant.
4 games
right,
at a
like,
time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now, we're watching it every time and it's like, oh, it's like 9:05. We should probably start wrapping up what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, it's great, and hope to be back next week. Hope to be back for a few more weeks. Only time will tell.
We'll go. We'll continue to do the show on this 7th season of the show as long as the team keeps winning, because that's allows us to keep going. Eventually, at some point, it will have to come to an end. We've never made it to 20 episodes. I think the most we've ever done is 19. I think 18 or 19 we've gotten to before. That was probably back in 2016 would be my guess. Were we weekly?
Dude,
I don't know. We might not have been weekly then.
I have no idea. Like,
Why
I
don't
just
you know
kinda,
these things?
I just kind of show up and like
no,
it-
so many jokes.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say people might be like, oh, he's like exaggerating. No, like that's literally it. Like, I show up and I joke with you. What are we doing?
He goes through the motions. He's in. He gets to collect his paycheck and he's out of here.
Right. That's yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, so we're going to be talking about the victory over York William Penn, the Bearcats. Got to go there for the first time for a varsity game while we've been doing the show, or while we've been helping out, coaching, doing whatever it is that we do here for the team. But Wilson and William Penn have played before, three times before this. All playoff games have all happened in the month of November in the district playoffs. Wilson improved to a perfect 4-0 against York.
Yeah, and they're one of those schools where they watch that classification line very closely, because they move up and down, especially now that it's 6 classifications. When it was 4, they were solidly in the 4. But when it's 6, they kind of bounce back and forth between 5 and 6. So, they're not, Wilson and York aren't always in the same classification for playoffs and things like that. But yeah, I know we have had them to Gurski a few times, or at least it feels like it. And I'm just trying to think when that was. I feel like I was at one of those games, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
So they actually, I believe. Oh no, that was Altoona. I was going to say I think that happened in 2007, but no, that's not accurate. If they play them, it's a coincidence. I was thinking of when they had to go. I think to one of the top seed, like 1 or 2 seed Altoona,
right,
and upset them like 7-6 or something like that. Then they won the next week and then lost in overtime to Harrisburg in the semifinals, which that was controversial, as I feel like a bunch of them are. But Wilson, York, William Penn, there's not a lot of history there. That was just the 4th game ever between the schools. And there it is. Here we go. So actually Wilson had not played them since 2009.
Okay.
So this is the first time that I have seen Wilson play York, but they played 3 out of 4 years in the early time of Doug Doms as head coach. They beat them in 2006, 40-13. They beat them in 2007, 38-12. Oh, so I was right. It was in 2007. It just wasn't the week one or the playoffs week one matchups. It was, I believe, a week later. They must have beat York William Penn to advance to the game against Harrisburg in the semifinals, and then also beat them in November 2009, and stayed perfect against them with the win Friday night. It was an interesting game. I feel like you and I were on the same page when we never really felt that the game was out of reach, out of hand for Wilson. Not that Wilson always controlled the game, but at no point was it like we're going to lose this game.
Right. So, like, you and I, we joke about the talks we have, like, in the week leading up to it and on the drive to games, especially obviously the away games. And we both kind of were in that spot where, I don't know. I guess I'd say, like, cautiously optimistic, but we're cautiously confident, maybe.
Yeah.
I knew that if Wilson played like they had been playing the last 5 weeks, that I was confident that would be good enough to win. And I mean, I know it was a rocky start. You know, you have the mix up on the snap, like, again, not really exactly seeing what happened there, but like just knowing it wasn't like a normal like play where it was a forced fumble or something like that. But something happened, and you know, they turn the ball over, and then they get a big run from their star. You know, like,
yeah,
it's just all these things kind of at first you're like, okay, well, all right, well, and then I'm just thinking, I'm like, there's no way they'll kick to Cam, right? And they did. And let me rephrase that. I don't know if I said this to you or if it was just something I was thinking of. Like, there's a difference. They did not kick to Cam, but they didn't kick away from him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what you cannot just,
you can't
Wilson
get it
has shown
anywhere
this,
near
whether
him.
it was the Hempfield game or whether it was this game, whether, you know, where they were kicking or when they ran, like, you know, they do some things to make you think they're going to give him the ball or they get him the ball, just all kinds of stuff. You can't just kick not to him. You have to kick away from him, you know,
Right.
and like Wilson was doing, they weren't kicking to Jaheim White.
Yeah.
Like, and not just like, oh, we're just going to kick it and see what happens. Like, but we won't try and kick it deep. No, we were kicking it away from him.
Yeah.
And that's what teams have tried to do, but they didn't do that on that kickoff, and Cam made them pay.
Coach Dom said in his weekly Tradition Club email that goes out to everyone that's part of the, you know, a dues paying member of the Tradition Club, that he felt that their special teams was weak, that they could exploit them, mostly because they didn't have a kicking component. They never kicked an extra point. They couldn't kick field goals. There was no kicker at all. Mm-hmm. And they felt that they would be better on the special teams, and they absolutely were 100% better on the special teams. They shut down all but one of their 2-point tries. I know, which is more defense when it's a 2-point try, but everything went Wilson's way in that regard. It is interesting when you talk about Cam, just how absurd. He's up to 7 return touchdowns for the year, 4 on punts, 3 on kickoffs. Every time I tweet out that update that Cam had a big return or a touchdown, you know, Paul Roberts jumps on. It's like, why are people? How you not learned yet? Well, because
he sent that out. It was still September, I think, when he sent out the tweets. Like, you can't kick to him, and people still are. And like, yeah, I don't know. Hey, I'll take it. Keep doing it, please.
And someone else tweeted in response to Paul, "How have coaches not figured out it's better to just take the penalty?" Yeah, because you don't even have those on punts. Like, kick it out of bounds.
Right.
Why even give up field position that leads to an easy quick touchdown?
Like, I felt like, and the conditions were crazy
Township
too.
did the best.
Township did a great job of it.
Township did the best job.
Which, it doesn't surprise me that they would have that detail under wraps. You know, like that they wouldn't.
Hempfield wasn't bad either. Wilson just had a response. Wilson had a way to set it up. They thought this is what they're going to do. They did. So Wilson won that chess match.
Right.
Township was able to neutralize it altogether. And like you said, the weather was also a factor. But the fact that Cam Jones hurt York, that's a problem for the Bearcats in their special teams game plan. It didn't go their way because he scored on a kickoff return, and then he took another one almost back all the way. There was a penalty that brought it back further, but it didn't end up hurting Wilson. Wilson scored, I believe, on the next play.
Yeah, the next play. Yeah.
Big 24-yard touchdown run by Brad Hoffman. Yeah. boy, what a game did Brad and Jaden have again. Again. 4 weeks in a row now, is it? 4 or 5 weeks in a row of just ground and pound. Like we talked about it last week, finding that identity, and they certainly have found it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the 64 carries for 333 yards or whatever it was last week, but it was pretty good overall again. 48 total rushes for 356 yards and 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns on the ground.
We'll take it.
So there were times where Wilson would get stopped for a short loss or no gain or maybe a small gain, but they were always able to get that like 5 to 8 yard chunks, and then every so often they burst the 10 to 15 yard big runs. Right. Like I said, the game never really felt out of our control.
No, because once Wilson got rolling, they got up a few scores, and then they, for the most part, like stayed there. And York scored a few times, but like that. Jaheim White is really
he's outstanding.
Good.
Like we shouldn't
really
gloss
good.
over that. We're making it sound like
it's not just like, oh, he was the best player on a district caliber team. Like, no, the kid's a standout. The kid's going to be playing on Saturdays. I don't know where. Like I don't.
Well, and he's only a junior. He's
right,
back next year.
Exactly. So like. And their quarterback's back next year.
Yeah. Like, well, so you're talking about like how York is one of those.
I wonder if they'll be 6A or 5A.
Well, I was just going to say York is one of those teams that the previous rotation before the 2021 seasons, the 18 and 19 seasons, they were 5A.
Right.
Then they got bumped up this year. Where are they going to be next time around? I just posted this week that the PIAA put out their classification parameters, meaning they have looked at all of the data submitted by the 560 plus schools that participate in all sports, but football specific. And they've broken it down to, all right, 0 to what, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's like 0 to 180 or whatever. Male enrollment currently 9th through 11th grade is 1A. And then, 181 to 260, 280, whatever it is. They did that from 1A to 6A. And 6A enrollment actually got a tad bigger last year, or the last time this happened 2 years ago. It was 583 and higher. Now it's 586 and higher. So it went up by just a few. The big thing that we all remember talking about is Mifflin missed out by one single person. They were at 582, meaning they're the largest 5A school in District 3. With enrollment numbers changing, especially with the crazy stuff happening and people switching schools and virtual and charter and like how that rolls in and the co-ops and everything, numbers could fluctuate decently, certainly by 1, or now it would be 4 to get Mifflin to bump up, but then you could see teams bump down.
Right.
I think you're going to see 6A in District 3 be between 14 and 18 schools. It's currently 17. I think the first 2-year rotation, it was only 15, I think. So it does change, but you're going to see 14 to 18 schools. Wilson is firmly in 6A. We're not moving out of that. But I posted, if you're on the Facebook page on Wilson Bulldogs Football, I posted the smallest 4 6A schools and the largest 4 5A schools from the last time this happened, just to get an idea of who could possibly bump down and who could possibly bump up. Of course, someone could have lost a lot or gained a lot and just all of a sudden jump up.
Right. Like you can see fluctuations in schools sometimes, and a class can be significantly bigger. And when I say significantly, you could talk about like 10 or 15 kids, 10 or 15 male students. Like that can be a big effect depending on where you stand with these rankings.
Right.
So, or classifications.
Yeah. So we'll see. Harrisburg's been down in 5A before. CD East is always close to that cutoff. Red Lion had been up in 6A. Yeah. They're down at 5A. York was down at 5A. They're up at 6A. Lebanon's been up in 6A before. So it's very interesting, and that's something that'll come out just after Thanksgiving or early December. We'll see what the final tallies are and who the opponents will be come playoff time for the 2022 and 2023 seasons. But back to now, before we get to Central York, let's finish our game recap talking about Wilson's victory over York. Let's look at a little bit more at the stats, and maybe I'll play the highlights while we're talking about it. Just bring it up. There we go. All right. So statistics, we were just talking about Jaheim White. He had 26 carries for 227 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a long of 61. He averaged 8.7 yards per carry. Wilson did a very good job against their main quarterback, Sam Stoner, the junior, the head coach's son. He was 17 of 29 for just 101 yards, and his longest pass was only 15 yards. Where they got burned was on...
I was going to say, not their longest pass, but his longest pass.
Was by White, the running back, also taking a toss and throwing it deep. That pitch pass, that pitch option pass, and it was tough, and it burnt Wilson on a big play, a 78-yard touchdown, and that was right before half, where Wilson you thought was starting to really take control.
You're thinking, oh, they're starting to dominate, and then nope. And we were getting the ball to start the second half.
Right.
So you're like, oh man, we've got a couple score lead, all this stuff. And then you give up the play. And it took some momentum, but Wilson came out with an answer in the second half. That wasn't the issue. Yeah, Cam's run here. They should have had him. Oh, it's tough to say. But it looked like they were going to have him in the backfield.
That's me.
And then
there
he
you
goes.
go.
Yeah.
And there I am.
There's
right
you.
there. That's
you.
me.
Away games, you're in them a lot.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. But I mean, this is all Wilson specific highlights. So you're only going to see the key Wilson plays. You're not going to see the big runs from Jaheim White or his pitch pass to Jonas Sims, who had 8 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown, but 78 of them came on that pitch pass, which is a perfectly run play by them.
Right.
They did exactly what they wanted to do. So 50-32, your final score. A lot of yards for both teams, but when you are able to do it on the ground the way Wilson was, they pretty much they punt once or twice. I have the stats right here. I should probably just...
We punted twice.
Once by Brad and once by Ben.
Yeah. Yep.
Time of possession really, really even. Honestly, I thought maybe we would have had the ball a little bit more because they tended to hit on a few big plays.
Right.
But both teams mostly favored the run. It was kind of weird that they didn't run the ball more.
Well, especially because they were fairly successful early on. Like, not every play, but Wilson started setting the edge a little bit better, and it seemed like they were playing a little more aggressive, like after the first few plays and things like that. And once our guys started flying around, we started making more plays in the backfield, and then that was when things turned, in my opinion, because if White got the ball and he was moving towards the line of scrimmage, we were in trouble. Sometimes we caught him before he was able to make that turn, but honestly, that was kind of like when you go outside. Inside, man, he was shifty. He could get through there.
Yeah, if he found a crease.
Yeah, he was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it was interesting because early on, he was getting to the outside, and that was a problem for us. But once we started setting that edge, I was kind of like, no, keep trying to get outside because our guys were making the plays, and I didn't want him because when he was going through the middle, if he made the right move or they got the right block or something, that was going to be a problem. So, but I mean, all in all, he had a good night. But
the York offense overall had a good night. Their issue was
they couldn't stop us.
They could not stop us in any way. I mean, they actually, if you look at it, compartmentalized just offense versus offense, they're pretty much toe to toe or even better than us. 21 first downs to 19 favor them. They got 6 first downs on penalty.
Yeah,
which not ideal. Now we had 356 net yards rushing. They had 235. I mean, neither number is anything to sneeze at. And we went 120 more than they did, but they had 179 passing yards to our 45, so they outgained us 414 to 401. Time of possession almost even, 23:56 to 24:04. We had 24:04. Third down conversions, we were only 1 of 6, and they were 5 of 13. Now 5 of 13 isn't great either, but it's better than 1 of 6.
Right.
Now you can say, well, maybe we didn't face as many third down situations because we were able to pick up enough yardage to constantly have first downs, but we only had 19 and they had 21.
Right.
So we were getting the job done, putting up 50 burger. That's the I mean, that's
50
great.
points in district playoffs.
Yeah, excellent. Especially
on the road,
a team that was ranked higher than you.
Right.
So Very, very, very strong night from the offense once again, getting the job done like they have this entire week. I mean, just think about that. 7 weeks ago, we were sitting here talking after losing to Manheim Central and sitting at 2-3. Did you ever think this team's destined for the district semifinals and we're going to do it all on the ground? We didn't know what to think.
I say no, but like I wouldn't have ruled it out. Like we've been talking about this on the show for a long time, and it probably, at least, especially back then, it probably sounded like just trying to take some positive spin, but like no, it was the truth then, and it's the truth now. There was only one, even after the 2-3 start, there was only one goal off the table, and that was beating Mifflin. Like that was the only goal that he said at the beginning of the season that was no longer on the table. And this team rallied around. They started making improvements. They found their identity, like we kind of talked to Coach Doms about, and like last week, and just have embraced it. And honestly, we'll hear a little bit about that in a bit from some of the guys about how they just embrace this because it's what this team does well, and they're making the most of it. Like, hey, yeah, I think Dendel says it in there when he's like, it's we not me or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the attitude you want your guys to have, and
For sure.
They've embraced it, and man, it's a lot of fun, and I hope they can keep it rolling. We'll see.
Cam Jones had 3 kickoff returns for 168 yards. He had that was it. Yeah, he didn't get to return any punts. So 3 for 168 and a score on kickoff returns. He had 1 catch for 4 yards. He had 1 rush for 28 yards, which was the touchdown. His older brother Jaden, 22 rushes, 155 yards, and 2 scores. He also chipped in 1 catch for 23 yards.
Which was a great play.
It was a great play. It was, getting him out in space like that. Yeah. It worked to perfection. Quarterback Brad Hoffman had 17 carries for 178 yards and 3 touchdowns. So just workman-like numbers, 48 total team rushes, 39 of them coming from Brad Hoffman and Jaden Jones. Defensively speaking, for the Bulldogs, Cam Jones had 7 total tackles, 1.5 for loss. It was nice to see him fly up and help in the running game against Jaheim White. His cornerback partner Eric Jackson, 6.5 total with 1 for loss. And your safeties are up next. Josh Drake and Gannon Brubaker, 5 total tackles for Drake and 4 for Gannon. Gannon also had an interception. We thought we had another interception by TJ to end a York scoring drive, but that one was waved off because of a penalty in the backfield. There was definitely some animated coaches on the sideline for parts of that one drive that York ended up scoring a touchdown. A couple questionable calls. The refs didn't like the chippiness from the sideline at that point, basically telling the coaches to cut it out.
I feel like that happens sometimes when they know they were wrong. Like
right, yeah, they're embarrassed, so they just want you.
Or especially in football when it's not necessarily like. So some of those calls were on the side of the field I was on, which is not the guy who's standing on the sideline has to hear it from the team.
Right.
Like sometimes it's like they're yelling at the guy, and the guy's like, "What do you want me to do?" I'm not saying literally, right. But like, not all the time, but yeah. It was interesting, but
yeah, it always is. It
right.
always is.
But like our defense was flying around and hitting guys, which was good to see. Like they were really flying around. I thought they looked like they were really hitting well in the game. The one that sticks out to me was the interception before half.
Yeah,
when Ramsey
unloaded on Stoner.
Broke him. Like
he hit him good.
Yeah, it was a good hit. Like, but just he just kind of came across and just and the throw ended up not getting quite as far as it needed to, and Gannon was there. So defense really stepped up. And I know that's like we gave up a lot of yards and stuff like that, but it's different. Like they made plays when they needed to. It would have been nice to stop them a couple more times, but we were scoring, and some of that, all right, there's a trick play, and yeah, you want to stop that, but you know what? It also looks different because I wouldn't have known that Jaheim White was left-handed.
Right.
Like
Now we do.
right.
For
So
sure.
so it all of those things. So
I'm not familiar with how much York loses, on the trenches and elsewhere, but having Stoner and White back, obviously that's pretty good returning core. Having quarterback and a stud running back like that. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to take the York Adams next year with what Central York is going to leave, and we'll have more on Central York here in a little bit.
right.
But I think they suffered graduation losses after last year, and certainly even more after this year. So maybe York William Penn will be the team to beat next year in the York Adams League.
Be interesting if that game is Week 10 matchup again, like it was this year.
Yeah,
so
I think it usually is, because I think it's the rivalry game, and last year or this year was at Central York.
Well, and I told you, I think those schools actually used to be extremely close, like geographically. Central York in the last decade has moved their campus out. It's still not far, but like they used to be very close.
Thankfully, they moved it east, so that our trip is slightly shorter.
East. But So it'll be interesting to see, like, young quarterback, young running back. It'll be interesting to watch, and like you said, it'll be interesting to see if they're in 5A or 6A, because we may not get a close look at that if they're 5, but
with
they definitely have some pieces returning. So
with Mifflin's Nick Singleton moving on after this year in graduation and moving on to Penn State at the moment, White should, I would think, get a lot of focus because he's really good.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the
I know
best.
He's already getting
He's going to be one of the best running
but
back in District 3 next year.
I can't imagine he doesn't get Power 5 offers.
Yeah, I feel like
those
are
coming. I feel like they have to be. Because he's very, very talented.
And I hope I don't know if he plays basketball or if he does track or any of that other stuff, but like you have to think like he's going to start hitting the camps and things like that this summer, or spring and summer. So it's it's going to be interesting. But yeah, the kid, you could tell right there, like he's a good running back.
Much like the last month plus of the season. I mean, really the 6-game winning streak, and I feel like throughout all 6 of these games, the same handful of people are up for player of the game, and it comes down to the offensive line, which we gave it to was it last week, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago was the offensive line. It's gone to.
We talked to them last week.
That's right. They got the award 2 weeks ago. We held them
in the cold and rain
last
week,
and it could be them because of what they've been able to do to help out Jaden Jones, who had another phenomenal night, and his brother Cam, what he does, even if he's not involved in the offensive side all that much, although we did get to see him have a rushing touchdown Friday night, what he does in the return game, switching field position or scoring,
it's not game changers. It's not just the touchdowns. It's the 70-yard returns where he sets up the touchdown, or when they kick it and they're only kicking it and we get it at our 40 yards,
it's a huge component. It's a third of the game, and it's very important and something that Wilson doesn't overlook. And the way Cam's been able to take that to another level this year is insane. He is over 1,000 total return yards, punt and kick combined.
It also makes me go back and think about how much of a weapon it was last year when Jack Wagner was booting it like into the end zone every time.
Every kickoff.
I'll tell you what, like seeing like Ben's in 10th grade, but like his kicks when he kicks them deep, and they haven't done that the rain and things like that, but with Ivy 2 weeks ago and then with Jaheim White this week, they've been kind of more directional kicking, but like he can boot it like to like the 5 there, and so I'm sure he can get it there.
2 more years to go,
right? So like he's going to get there, but like man, that's such a weapon. That's such a weapon in high school football to be able to boot it into the end zone.
We saw the flip side of that where York didn't have it.
Right.
They had no answer for the kicking and nothing to do with that. But then the only person that I didn't mention that we've been talking about of how good they played of late is Brad Hoffman, and went with him over Jaden and Cam this week just because he ended up having more touchdowns and more yards. Is that fair? I don't know, but this is our show, so that's what we're gonna go with. But Brad, Jaden, Cam, offensive line. It's just that's been the story. I think everyone has expected the defense to play the way they have been playing and playing very, very well. But that seems to be an entire unit working cohesively. There's not been one standout guy. We've mentioned a few all the time: Ramsey, Memo, TJ Flight.
I think Memo had a sack. Yeah.
But they're all working so well in unison. No one has stepped up, and I shouldn't phrase it that way, been this overwhelming.
Right, they've stepped up as a unit.
Yeah, it's just been just this group work that we haven't been able to single out a specific defensive performance because it's just been a collective effort. And the offense always gets the accolades. Let's face it, unless you have some ridiculous defensive, pick six or multiple sacks or things like that. It's tough to earn those awards.
Like Josh Allen today.
Josh Allen on Josh Allen crime.
Yeah.
So, so we're gonna go with Brad Hoffman for his performance Friday night in the victory over York, and that is he's now won a couple of these awards. But we didn't want to talk to Brad and Jaden or Cam again. We've talked to them a bunch. We talked to the offensive line last week. There's another component to this renewed focus on the rushing attack, and it's a group that doesn't get talked about in this fashion much at all, and that's a bunch of the wide receivers, because in an offense that now is barely throwing the ball 5 to 10 times a game, they don't get a lot of opportunities to make plays with the ball in their hands. But we haven't heard them complaining or making excuses in any capacity, and we wanted to say, hey, what's this about? What do you think about this rushing attack?
Right. And when the time comes, these guys have made plays. TJ had a would-be interception, but makes some other plays. I know he gets some of the shovel pass, coming across sometimes. Dendel had the huge catch last week. The guys are accepting their role and making the most of it and being ready when they're called upon.
And it's working. Wilson on a 6-game winning streak. So here we are. We're going to talk to Sean Dendel, TJ Flight, and Evan Williams after Wilson's victory over York.
All right, we're here post-game with a few of our receivers from the victorious Wilson Bulldogs team, moving on in the District 3 playoffs, beating York tonight in York 50-32. Guys, the last few weeks, there haven't been a lot of balls in the air for you to catch, but you've been doing your job on the ground, blocking for Jaden and Brad. What does it feel like to be asked to do that instead of catching the ball and making some big plays?
We know what it takes to win, and obviously it's working, so we're going to keep pushing, and we know what we need to do.
It's a team.
Yeah, it's just a team game. That's what it was. It's me over I.
No selfishness at all.
Now, what was it like in practice this week leading up to this game, knowing that you wanted to continue to pound the rock, the identity you formed? Did you do anything different, or is it just pretty much play the way you've been?
The way we've been.
Yeah, just the way we've been. Just intense.
We knew it was a big game, and we executed, and we did it.
If it worked, don't stop.
All right, now you guys get the opportunity to take on the number 1 seeded Central York team next week. Hopefully, a week from now, maybe we get to talk to you guys again after another victory.
Let's do it.
Go get warm, guys.
All right.
All right, so short and sweet interviews over the last 3 weeks. The elements, rain or cold. We like to keep them short and sweet. And also when it's a road game, it's a pinch to get guys to get the food in on the bus and out of there. So we know what they're focused on, and it's definitely the food. And we heard that Coach Brandon Doms last week talk about bribing his offensive line and rewarding his line with food. And the same thing goes, talking to the skill players too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those guys usually, they're laser focused, not just during the game, but after the game as well.
Get warm, eat food,
right.
Get on the bus and get home. But I mean, it's been a total team effort, and they've all bought in. You could tell there's no one's hanging their head, no doing the diva NFL wide receiver thing where I only care if I get my stats. No, it's all about the team.
You mean like leaving your team and then they put up 41 points?
Yeah, something like that. But these guys have been doing a great job, and winning cures all, or it should, and especially it does so at the high school level because you're playing for your teammates, for your coaches,
right.
for your school. it doesn't get any better than that. So
well, you know what? And that statement right there just takes me back to after one of the games this year when we saw Caleb Brown, and he's like you don't realize it until you're on, and he's moved on to the next thing, and it's a great thing, and he's loving it. But like he said, it's different. He's like he immediately understood like what all the guys who come back and say, oh, what I wouldn't give for one more game, all that stuff, and he's like, I get it now. He's like, I understand. He's like, and that's not like bad. It's just the way it is, right. And it's hard to recognize those things when you're in the moment. But hopefully they can keep it rolling.
So that's it, I think, for our recap of the win against York. Gets Wilson back into the playoffs and back in with a victory after missing last year because of the COVID truncated season and the reduction of the playoff field. Wilson missed out on the playoffs for the first time since I think 2005, maybe.
I don't even know.
I think they had made it every year that Coach Doms has been the head coach. So I think it was the fall of 2005 was the last time, I believe, Wilson missed the playoffs until COVID year last year. There's still raw feelings about that. So
I was gonna say, do you want to expand upon that?
No, let's not. Let's not go into that anymore. We're moved on, right? We moved on.
Yeah, clearly you've moved
but
on.
It's fine. We got the win, ready to roll, and now we get to what's the reward? Go back to York to play the number 1 seeded team, undefeated Central York. But before we talk about our
team that went to the state championship last year,
the defending district champs and state runners up. That's all we have to do. It's fine. But before we do that, let's do a little bit of our announcements and our housekeeping here on the Bulldog Hour. First up, just a week ago, the Wilson football and community lost someone else near and dear to the program. It was Mr. Jim Lippincott. He was a graduate of the Wilson High School class of 1946, and he was an original Prexy, as Wilson was known as the president back in the 1940s and 50s. He was a member of the first Wilson football team that fall in 1945, and he is the one that threw the first ever touchdown pass in program history against the Reading JVs, and that would end up actually being Wilson's first victory that game. And Mr. Lippincott wasn't just great on the football field, he was also great in a variety of sports at Wilson, which led him to be inducted as part of the inaugural class of the Athletic Hall of Fame in 1986. And many people over the last few decades recognize him from being at a multitude of Wilson sporting events, especially football, where for a long time he was part of the chain gang. And when he wasn't doing that anymore, he was on the sidelines cheering on the team. So he passed away last Sunday on Halloween, which coincidentally was also his birthday, at the age of 94. And Mr. Lippincott was a very fun and interesting man to talk to. I always enjoyed our conversations, and as one of the last members of the first football team, it is very important in Wilson history. So our thoughts are with his family and friends, and Big Jim will be missed. All right, we want to thank our sponsors of the Bulldog Hour, especially my dad, Bill Mays, and Mays Sandwich Shop for being with us from day one, as well as our latest sponsor, Mike Drago and MikeDragoSports.com.
It's all over the place covering Wilson stuff this weekend. I know there was an article on the girls' soccer team and Alexis Solt. It was kind of like part of the big story there. In their district championship game, but also Jason Garante was at the game, covering. Was Wilson the game of the week again? I think.
Yes, we were.
Yep. Go Big Recruiting game of the week.
Yep. So. GoBigRecruiting.com game of the week for I think the 5th time this year. I know for sure Central Dauphin, Mifflin, and Exeter, I believe.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see.
I think Hempfield. So this might have been the 6th because I think Hempfield and Manheim Township were.
Is he going to put it up again this week? I mean, I imagine he would. I feel like it
could be Mifflin Warwick.
Right, I agree.
Wilson,
but he's already. I think he already wrote about how last year's game that didn't happen.
Yeah,
that was going to be the
Warwick
clash
doesn't
of the
return
Titans.
The near the same.
Don't get me wrong.
Players.
Don't get me wrong. Like Warwick made the playoffs. They won their game last week, but I can't get at Warwick lost to Penn Manor.
Right.
Like
on that last second Hail Mary.
Absolutely. And we've seen this. Anything can happen on any Friday. But like I think Mifflin, it's not going out on a limb to say I think Mifflin's gonna
beat them. I think Mifflin's gonna mercy rule them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been an incredible game to see last year. That was the district championship game. That was a forfeit victory for the Mustangs because of COVID. What else would have caused that? But yeah, Mike Drago, MikeDragosports.com, and his slew of beat writers have been covering a lot, not just Burke's football teams, but you mentioned soccer, all over boys and girls soccer. And unfortunately, the Wilson girls fell just short to undefeated Central Dauphin, who both boys and girls are undefeated. They're like 44-0.
Yeah,
those two teams and won both district titles.
Like favored to compete for state championships. The girls have had a great year, and the year continues.
Right,
like they're not done.
That's the nice thing about field hockey, girls volleyball, and girls soccer all still competing in states because you don't have to win districts to make it. They advance. Variety of schools advance that don't win the district, and
which
district
is again
3
back
is huge.
from last year, I believe.
Right, last year
that
district champs only. That's why the Wilson girls volleyball team, who had a splendid year last year as well, they didn't get to make states despite being district runner-up last year because COVID was you're only taking district champs. So this is the first year ever that Wilson girls volleyball has advanced to the state tournament. So congratulations to them, and good luck to field hockey and girls soccer as they continue into state playoffs this upcoming week. That is one thing that was mentioned on the MikeDragosports.com podcast this week with Rod Frisco from District 3 and from Eric Epler from Penn Live. It's a great listen. One thing they mentioned, they talk about the history of the District 3 playoffs and how that was in the early days. They started in 1982. The state playoffs started in 1988. But Mike and Rod talk about how football is the only sport where you got to win your district to even compete in states.
Yeah, it's an interesting talk with Rod Frisco. Like, you kind of think of him as like Mr. District 3, like, and I mean that in a good way. Like,
yeah.
Like
I mean, he knows so much,
right? Like of that District 3, like his history and things. Like,
because
he's been around for all of it, So
I mean, before he was with District 3, which I think he came in like 2011 or 2012, so he's been there just over a decade.
Right.
But he was doing it for Penn Live beforehand.
He covered
Harrisburg
it
Patriot
for
News.
like Harrisburg, which kind of centered
and
all there.
I think he kind of did it on his own. I think he had his own site because I feel like when I first started doing this for Wilson in 2010, 2011, and early 2012, maybe right when he left and went to District 3, I was going to his website all the time for information.
Right, when you needed information on the district, you didn't go to the District 3 website. You went to Rod Frisco's website. Yeah.
So it's a great listen on MikeDragosports.com podcast from this past week. I don't know who is on Mike's show this week, but I'm sure the Bulldogs will come up in conversation. Also, thank you to our sponsors at CNS Supply Company and Al Wicks, Andy Herr, Marty Palm, and our 3 anonymous donors. And there's multiple ways you can support us here besides sponsorship, advertising, and the in-kind donations. Please visit BulldogHour.com for all your information, past and present, on the football team. And Justin's favorite,
like and share.
And that is a great way to help us out. I already mentioned this, but we'll reinforce it. We have a show next week.
Yeah.
And we will be back next Sunday, November 14th at 8:30 on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. All right, so that's out of the way. Quickly, the schedule collapsing quickly, but still alive, still playing this Friday, November 12th, District 3 6A semifinals. And Wilson is going back to York for the second straight week to play a York Adams team. This time, the defending District 3 6A champions and state runner-up, Central York, and blue chip quarterback recruit Bo Pribula?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've heard it said a bunch of different ways, but he is committed to Penn State.
I was going to say Central York's Penn State recruit.
Central York's Penn State recruit, quarterback Bo. It's a little bit of a different offense that's going to be thrown out at our Wilson defenders this week because he's a dual threat option at quarterback. He's a great passer. He's a great runner. I don't know much about their weapons. I don't know if his weapons are the same caliber as they were last year. I feel like they took some graduation hits in that
Yeah.
that area.
I feel like they did, but at the same time, I feel like you also get a year of growth out of your Power 5 quarterback. So like that,
and
kinda
also
helps.
they're 10-0.
Right, that helps adjust. Yeah, the only game they've lost in the last 2 years is the state championship game, the St. Joe's Prep.
Yes.
So that's not really a knock on against anyone.
Right.
So yeah, it's you know, they're the real deal. You know, however, that's not to say that I don't think Wilson has a shot. That what Wilson needs to do is go in and play the way they're capable of playing. And we've seen Wilson play a lot closer to their ability level
the last 6 weeks.
The last 6 weeks, and we need to continue that trend and play. And this isn't because it's Central York. This is because it's the district playoffs.
No mistakes.
Right. You need to be getting better. And if Wilson plays the best that they can, first of all, what more can you ask for?
Right.
2, I think that's going to give us a shot in the game.
Absolutely.
Especially the way Wilson's playing right now. This should surprise no one, but Wilson's going to have to be able to run the ball. Right. They have to be able to run the ball.
They cannot turn it over.
And we can't turn it over, and we have to avoid giving up the big plays on or when we're on defense to their offense.
No interceptions and fumbles, and no plays, over 30 yards, 25, whatever cutoff you want to give. You cannot give up big plays like that. There were too many of those last week. We were able to survive because the defense could not stop. York's defense could not stop us. Central York is better in every facet. This is the best team that Wilson's played this year. We have 4 games in common with Central York.
Right.
Remember,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Central York beat Exeter at Exeter in the delayed week 1 game that got moved to Saturday, 35-28. Exeter is very close to pulling that upset.
Right. Exeter had the ball inside the 10 and couldn't score
a
bunch
couple
of times.
Yeah, a bunch of times. Yeah, because we talked to Paul Roberts when he was on our show early in the season. He talked about that game that Exeter hung in there with Central York. Now, they beat Cumberland Valley the next week 21-3, and then in week 3 they beat Hempfield 35-21. So Hempfield, Wilson lost to Exeter, but Wilson beat Hempfield, have that in common with Central York. Then Central York was awarded a forfeit victory against Red Lion. They then crushed Dover 68-21. Southwestern 60-0. Spring Grove
beat this past week.
Southwestern, yes.
Yeah.
Spring Grove, who I believe is the third best team in the York Adams 1, whatever they call that. Spring Grove, Central York beat them 48-17. Then Northeastern, Central York beat them 53-7. Then Dallastown, who's an interesting team because Dallastown also played and beat Manheim Township and played and lost to Hempfield. Central York beat Dallastown 31-21. And then finally in the regular season finale in the rain and the terrible weather, Central York beat York William Penn 60-14.
Yeah.
So, there should have been red flags about the York defense after that game, but they're also going up against Central York, who, like you said, only lost in the last 2 years is in the state championship game, and they have a blue chip quarterback.
Yeah, but Central York also only gave up 14 points to William Penn, who we saw they can score
and they can put them up.
So the defense looks like they're legit, and I would say based on this past week, their first round playoff game, the defense appears to be solid.
Right. So they also played Manheim Township first round of playoffs. Central York beat Manheim Township 26-14. So are they beatable? Sure. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. They are the best team that Wilson has faced this year. Wilson is going to have to play a flawless game. No turnovers, very few penalties, and it'll come down to a bunch of sports cliches. It's football cliches. It'll come down to the line. Can they keep the Wilson offense going and not force, third and long where we have to pass, because we just haven't been able to do that very well this year. The running game has just been another level over the last 6 weeks. if the offensive line can give Jaden and Brad time, and then the defensive line can contain
Right.
Privula, because he's a very good throwing quarterback, but I feel like he's best on the move. He's better on the move.
Right.
So if they can keep him in the pocket and have him
when
force
he
some
moves,
throws,
that is going to force the coverage to hold up longer, and
right.
Lots of things can go wrong, and so you need to contain and let your coverage stay true, and you need to play disciplined, and we talk about the discipline a lot when we're playing teams like Mifflin or things like that. But the discipline here is to just know your assignment, play your assignment, and trust that the other guys are going to hold up their end of the assignment as well. So,
right.
Yeah, it's a tall task, but it's something that they can do, and I think we've been building towards it for the last 6 weeks. So, while I would say we certainly haven't faced a team like Central York, like we faced Mifflin, who is really good. It's completely different style than what we're going to be getting out of Central York.
Oh yeah, sorry. I guess I was discounting Mifflin, saying Central York's the best team we played this year. I guess I should take that back, because Mifflin's the best team we faced this year.
Right.
I do not think Central York is better than Mifflin. So that
that
was me just I don't want to remember the Mifflin games. So I just put
blocked that out.
I blocked that one out.
But but it is a completely different style.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
And I think, but if you look at it from the Central York standpoint, are we the best team that they've played?
Yeah, well, can I say it this way? Central York is the best 6A team we've played this year.
That's
better.
That's
better.
But looking at their schedule, I think you could make a strong argument that we're the best team.
Well, this all comes down to the Exeter argument, right?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Well, that was back in week 1, so I blocked that out.
That was Exeter and Central York week 1, and that was before we've been able to do what we've been able to do. Honestly, I would like to play Exeter again, because I think that would go way differently.
I think it would be different now. I don't know if the only stat that matters with score, if it changes, I don't know. But I think the game is certainly different the way Wilson's playing now versus the way we were playing in week 2.
If you can look at it of who beat who, that doesn't always work, as we've discussed many times this season. On their schedule, I feel like the best team should be us. Most people would probably say Exeter.
Yeah, and that's fair.
So,
but
either us or Exeter,
right?
It would be Central York's most difficult game this season. They play Central York in week 1, and hopefully we can make them play us. Their last game is against us.
That would be great.
So that game will be back in York Friday night, 7:00. It's supposed to be a little warmer this week, which is nice. But my wife was quick to point out that in the 2-week forecast, the only time it's supposed to rain is Friday night. So
great, wonderful.
That's awesome. Does that play into our hands? I thought it would.
I don't know. They just put up 60 in the rain 2 weeks ago.
One, I thought it would help us a little bit more against Manheim Township. We still won, great, 66 rushes for 333 yards. No one's going to argue about that. It certainly helped us out a bit, I guess. But yeah, Central York put up 60 points against York in that same condition. So clearly there were some issues there as well.
On the other hand, we just put up 50 against York. So
sure, yeah. Hey, any given Friday, right?
And here's the thing. It doesn't really matter if in the big picture people think Central York's the better team, as long as you win on Friday night.
Right. You want to turn some heads? Have this Wilson team that was 2-3 halfway through the year beat 11-0 Central York at their place.
We said it though. We said it then. Would you want to play a Wilson team that had won out, which they did, and then makes the district playoffs? Would you be like, oh yay, we've got Wilson coming? Probably not.
Do you think Central York was happy they had to play Township and Wilson back to back?
Probably not thrilled about it. No.
Where Harrisburg gets Carlisle and Hempfield. Although I don't want to sneeze at Hempfield after what they did to CB East this past week. Congratulations to George Ager and the job he did. I did not see that coming. Especially because when we first got the score, 35-2,
right,
I was like, well, Mackay Flowers certainly didn't play in that game. Right, he had to be ineligible.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think he'd have that big of an effect on the offense.
Nope,
And
he played. He played.
Yeah.
Don't know how they snuck that one through because last I had seen he was ineligible for the playoffs after his transfer. Clearly that wasn't the case. Or CD East was like, no one will know, right? No, I don't want to spread that rumor. That'd be terrible. He played in the game because I read the recap and the box score. Did not matter. Hempfield dominated CD East, the 3 seed.
Yeah.
Pure domination at Central Dauphin Middle School at a Speed Ebersol, Landis Field, Speed Ebersol Stadium. Hempfield took it to them, so their reward is to play this Saturday at Harrisburg now.
Yeah, who took it to Carlisle?
Who beat up on Carlisle, who had upset CD East the week before to even make the playoffs. So yeah, a whole bunch of stuff going on, but we're left with
CD East was putting together a pretty good season.
They were
lost to Carlisle and then got smoked by Hempfield.
Yeah, last 2 weeks not great for them. They've got a young coach who had them going in the right direction, just fell apart a little bit at the end, but. So 4 teams left in the District 3 6A playoffs. Number 1 seed Central York. Number 2 seed Harrisburg, whose only loss this season is at Governor Mifflin. Number 5 seed,
when they scheduled the game on Wednesday.
Yeah, 3 days notice, and their freshman quarterback didn't play. Number 5 seed, that would be us, Wilson, and number 6 seed Hempfield. So it's 1 versus 5 and 2 versus 6.
Right.
So
just like everybody expected.
Just as
actually, we honestly, kind of called it because we're like, anything can happen. I would classify this under the anything can happen.
And we're still at the point where if you give me one of Central York or Harrisburg, I'll take the field. If you give me Central York or Harrisburg against the field, I'll take the top 2 seeds. We're whittling that down.
I hope we whittle it down a lot this week.
I hope we cut it in half. I hope it's 5 or 6 the next week. That
would be awesome because you know what that would mean.
Home game at Gurski.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Although it would be interesting if Hempfield beats Harrisburg. Now they come off beating CD East at CD East, beating Harrisburg at Harrisburg, and now you get to welcome them to Gurski.
Well, I think we saw their potential kind of go when they went to that passing game in against us. They hadn't really done that. They hadn't really opened it up like that this year. They run a very different style, and then out of a necessity, they changed what they were doing,
and they did it really well.
And week 10, they didn't really need it, but last week, from what I saw in the game, it sounds like they ran an offensive plan very similar to what they ran against us.
And a great defensive performance.
Yeah,
at least 1 pick 6, I believe.
Yeah,
they surrendered those 2 points to them. CDs didn't even score themselves.
Right.
And
the defense didn't give up the points.
No. So, that's scary. Obviously, LL team, I'd love to see Hempfield beat Harrisburg, and hopefully we can beat Central York and make it an all-LL final after an all-York final last year.
Yeah.
We'll see, but Wilson,
man, that would have some mid-Penn people really, really anxious. 2 straight years of a mid-Penn team not even making the final.
Hey, there's only one of them left now.
I know. Yeah.
We've played Central York 3 times prior. All of them came during head coach Doug Dom's reign as the top guy. Doug's been here for so long. Obviously they
virtually every game.
Yeah, probably every game has happened with him at the helm at some point. But as head coach, Wilson's played Central York 3 times. Again, all in the playoffs. A win in 2009, 34-7. A win in 2012, 35-10. I remember that one. And then a win in 2016, 55-23. We were at that one as well. So Wilson, yes, once again playing a York Adams opponent, coming in with an unblemished record at 3-0. Just like this past week where Wilson went to 4-0 against York. Hopefully Wilson can get to 4-0 against Central York this Friday. But again, we can't say it enough that it will take a supreme effort, flawless execution from the Bulldogs for that to happen. And of course, Justin and I will be there helping out and reporting on it. And we will be back here in 1 week's time to tell you how the game went.
Yeah, and hopefully adding a show onto our calendar.
And then hopefully saying we'll be back for episode 18. And yeah, that'd be something. Like so many people have said, hey, it doesn't matter what you do in the first 5 weeks once you make the playoffs.
Right. Hey, if people were like, hey, you might only beat them a couple out of 10 times. Well, that's fine. If this is one of those times, I'll take it.
Like our supporter and sponsor, Andy Herr, was saying, Wilson's basically been playing playoff games since week 6.
Yeah, and the way it unfolded, it wasn't just hyperbole.
The win or go home for all those games.
Yeah, if Wilson lost any game since the Manheim Central game, the season's over. Would have been done last week.
So yeah, big wins against Penn Manor, McCaskey, and Cedar Crest.
And while you seem to overlook those, like
that built
you lose any, right? And if you lost any of those, your season's over.
Yeah.
Well, the season was over at 10 weeks.
But they built momentum, they got confidence, and then they went into huge stakes win or go home games at Hempfield versus Manheim Township, win those, undefeated in the league, section champions, and now they went as road warriors to technically seed-wise upset York, and now they got the big one. So great turnaround, great story. Let's get to win 9 and be back here to talk about the potential for win 10 and a opportunity to play for the team's, I think it would be 8th district championship then.
So let's keep it going. Let's
keep it going for sure. So I think that's it. Anything else from you, Justin? Anything else to say?
No,
we're done. We're out of here. So that's the Bulldog Hour for this week. Thanks for joining us. We hope we'll see you right back here in 1 week's time. I'm Joe Mays. He's Justin Raffoff. Until next time, remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.